One of the things that you need to be careful of on an assessment is this. I asked what seems like a relatively simple question, which is, how many ribs do we have or exist in the human body? And people will tell me 12. Remember that ribs are paired, so that you can either write 24 or 12 pairs, because if you had 12 ribs, the ribs cage would end right in through here, which would not be good for the organs that the ribs actually protect. We have 12 pairs of ribs. The first 7 pairs are what are known as true ribs because they will attach directly to the sternum through cartilage. You can see that there. The remaining ribs, pairs 8 through 12, either attach directly, indirectly through cartilage that attaches to cartilage, or do not attach at all. And those will be the floating ribs, the pairs 11 and pairs 12. They only attach to the vertebrae. They do not attach to the vertebrae and the sternum. So again, the true ribs attach posteriorly to the vertebrae and then anteriorly to the sternum through cartilage. The false ribs either attach to cartilage that attaches to cartilage or only attach to vertebrae. Remember that the term or root of word that means ribs is costal. And remember that chondro is the root or the part of a word that means cartilage. So if I ask you where the costochondral junction would be, I'm hoping that you can figure out where that will be. This is the sternum. And likewise, if you hear the term sternochondral junction, what might we be talking about? The sternum is divided into 3 parts: the manubrium, which is this section that is superior, the body, and then the xiphoid process, which is here, which is going to be important because clinically speaking, it is a landmark for CPR. A nice to know, not a need to know, is that it is cartilage until you're about age 40 or so, and then it calcifies. So who can tell me where the costochondral junction is and the sternochondral junction is, or are? I should say are because there are multiple. The junction between any rib and the cartilage is the costo for rib chondral junction, and the junction between the sternum and the cartilage is between the sternum. So this is the sternochondral junction, going through here, here, and here. Hope that made sense. Now, for the most part, this is nice to know, not a need to know. But since we have a vertebrae up here, let's just give a quick review. Here's the body of the vertebrae. Here's the spinous process. Here's the transverse process. Ribs will actually articulate with vertebrae both on the transverse process and against the body of the vertebrae itself. You'll see that there's going to be a lot of ligaments that are going to make sure that those attachments are nice and strong. So here's costal cartilage. Now, here's a question for you. I'm going to flip back, not this way. I'm going to go back to this guy. I don't remember. I'm going to ask this because I don't remember if I asked this and talked about this in one of the other videos that I did. You take a look at these images. Think about this question, and if you cannot figure out what the answer is, remind me to answer it when we are in class together. If you have damage to your thoracic vertebrae, you are much less likely to be paralyzed than if you have damage to your cervical vertebrae or your lumbar vertebrae. If you have damage to your cervical vertebrae, you are at risk of quadriplegia. And if you have damage to your lumbar vertebrae, you are at risk of paraplegia. Again, you're much less risk of paralysis or some sort of loss of sensation or movement if you have damage to the thoracic vertebrae. I want you to think about that and see if you can come up with an answer. Pop down here again. So there is our rib cage. Remember that we're talking about the axial skeleton right now. These last slides are of some of the bones that form the axial skeleton. Remember that the cranial and facial bones and the ear ossicles, the two sets of ear ossicles, the ribs and the sternum and the vertebral column, which include the sacrum and the coccyx, are all part of the axial skeleton. The other bones are part of the appendicular skeleton, which we will review in the next section. See you there.